Hello everybody, Conodger here, and welcome back to the Vector Automotive Challenge. So we've just returned from our meetings with investors. We took the car out to some car shows to get the public perception of our Vector Intrigue concept car. And overall, the reception was pretty warm, but extremely varied. There's lots of varying opinions on both the aesthetics of the car, the performance of the car, which, to be honest, we were not entirely worried about at the time, because this was a prototype vehicle. We did take some liberties in the design of this vehicle to make it look like it was wild and crazy and really try and drum up interest from the public. We may have, though, failed to warm over all of the investors that are looking to dump some money into the Vector Automotive Company because of the possible non-desirable driving attributes that would go to the car, and there were some complaints about the aesthetics of the car. Opinions of the investors did vary quite widely, but overall, at this point, we are not quite ready to push this car into production. Financially, this is something we were prepared for. It's very rare that the first vehicle you would produce would be the one you would take to production. This is a test bed, and I think it served its purpose fairly well there. We learned a lot and got a lot of great feedback, so I think what our plan for now is to take our existing prototype car here, take it back down to bare bones, maybe tweak some things, and make more of a production-ready concept to see if we can keep the public interest in the vehicle alive, but maybe try and drum up some more investor interest. In order for this company to be a success, we need a good investment team behind us, because we need the ability to spend money on prototypes, on new ideas, trying to invigorate the company rather than just copying other companies. The 60s, we are in a time where the ingenuity of vehicles is maybe not on the forefront. Honestly, I was a little disappointed in the reception of the vehicle as maybe not radical enough. So that's something that I will try and work on as well as a designer, because we've already had a few musings of people maybe not quite agreeing with the aesthetic choices of the car. So the year will now be 1961. We have lost a year, so another year will pass and we will not have produced a vehicle that is actually for sale. But that's not the end of the world. We want to make sure our first car is a winner, and that means modifying this car to try and make it into something great. So I am going to get to work on the body first, because I think that's the area that could possibly use some tweaking. And then we'll get to work on the chassis and the engine stuff to try and make it more production ready. But as I'm working on the body, here are some clips from some of the investment team that I thought were worth listening to.
What we want to see is a bit more of a clear line of what the car actually wants to be. It is all over the place in design decisions. Why, for example, are you using a leather chassis when you put such a strong engine into the car? It is the opposite of what the car needs. Better performance by lowering cam, I think. For better drivability, you don't need as much wheel spin. Smaller and less powerful engine would be good, and you could put on a 4-barrel carburetor for better economy, because then you don't need as much flow either. So we are kind of intrigued about the car design, but there's definitely room for improvement. You need to watch out for putting wings on the back and not knowing about it.
One car I saw potential in at this show was the Vector Intrigue. It's got a great power plant and a great chassis. The interior was stunning, but I don't think the designer was reading the same book. If he can't get along with the rest of the people with their idea, he should be fired. But this car could easily be mass-produced. It's got great, easy-to-build chassis and a great, easy-to-build engine. With a cheaper mindset for the build, it could sell hundreds of thousands, covering its own market out of the people who want a cheap, semi-drivable car that goes from light to light like no other. Just make it a little less ugly.
The styling is odd. I'm much more used to long bonnets and short boots. This seems a bit backwards. I like the fixtures, I especially like the side vents, but the overall proportions seem strange. Admittedly, that might be good for a concept car. It did make me stop to look at it. The engine is interesting. 281 cubic inches and twin 2-barrel is pretty standard, but it produces almost as much power as a late-model fuel-injected 283 Chevy small block V8. It's not extraordinary, but it's a pretty good proof of concept for the valve train setup.
So here we will see the changes to the Intrigue Mark II. The changes are somewhat subtle and has retained most of the car's original style. It would be well described as hit or miss for our audience as the first version, but there was usually some key points to the design that people liked, and then some that people didn't. Many people did not like the long, overextended rear trunk, which, as designers, we were trying to keep in mind the practicality of the car with a large trunk space. And I'm sure in the future we could make an extended chassis or extended body version of this car for our loyal mobster customers. But that's a road we'll have to cross in the future. The front has been tidied up a little with a new headlight design, a slightly more rounded front, and simpler grille bar setup. All of these changes were made to make the car a bit cleaner and sleeker while maintaining an international appearance. We don't want this car to look too American. We don't want it to look too European. We want it to be able to be sold in every market that we possibly sell it in. So a common theme you heard with the investors is that the actual mechanical workings of the car were quite questionable. We used this pretty technically advanced overhead cam high output V8 for our concept car. This engine was handcrafted and spared no expense to make sure that it really made a big impression with our customers. Unfortunately, on the large scale, to actually push this car to production, this engine just wouldn't be possible. So we want to design something that is easily produced, but still has a good output that will push this car into the good sport category, but something that is much more obtainable and something that will inspire our investors to think we really mean serious business when it comes to making the Intrigue. When it comes to size, power, and smoothness, an inline 6 is the way to go. We need this to be a highly versatile engine that could maybe even stretch to a large variety of platforms. The problem with inline 6s is the length. Obviously, the Intrigue has a shorter hood and would not have the room for a large displacement inline 6. We learned a thing or two with our prototype engine though, and this direct acting overhead cam setup is something that will really push our engine into a more unique place in the market. There are many American inline 6s out there, but for the most part, they are pushrod style engines. It is 1961, it's time to move on, it's time to move forward. Direct acting overhead cam will give us lower friction and a higher possible RPM range, and is the right choice for our company's future. For our base model engine, there's not going to be anything too extraordinary about the bottom end, but this is something that could be changed for higher output engines in the future. In its stock configuration, this engine is very long stroked. For the Intrigue, we're going to bring that stroke down and lose a little bit of displacement in the process because we need it to be a little bit more high revving. Here we have our inline 6 for the Vector Intrigue Mark II production-ready concept car. The horsepower of this engine is modest in comparison to our previous V8, but with 145 horsepower and 158 foot-pounds of torque, the performance will still be quite good for the Intrigue, with a significant bump in drivability is what we're aiming for. The weight of this engine alone is nearly half of what the previous V8 was, and that should really help the balance of the vehicle. With its strong torque curve and smooth power curve, this should make for a pretty good driving vehicle. So now let's move on to the trim and work on the chassis some. Alright, so when it comes to the gearbox, would a 4-speed help this car out? Well, we need a little bit more top speed in there too. Let's give it just a hair bit of overdrive if we're going to do a 4th gear, because that will help with economy quite significantly. Wheel spin, still a major concern, 61.4%. I think that's pretty much just as bad as it was in the V8 version. So longer gearing, the 3-speed would actually help that significantly, bring that down to 39%. It's going to hurt our mileage a hair, but I think it's worthwhile. We really want this to be a much easier to drive car. And with proper spacing, we were able to get that down to 37%, and hopefully we can even improve upon that some more. As we move forward to the tires, currently I have 185s front and back, which I think is pretty good on some 14-inch rims. I don't think the sports compound are probably worth the money. Yeah, it's such a minor increase. Probably not worth the money. I really like the way this steering behavior is looking. It's sporty but drivable. We are having some brake fade issues, so let's put some more aggressive pads on there, which will help get rid of some brake fade and increase our sportiness as well. Alright, so we're still having quite a bit. What could we do to help that? Larger drums, front and back, helped out a lot. Those larger 14-inch wheels helped us in getting those, so that is a very nice improvement. Our drivability is up to 31.9 and a 15 sportiness. I think these are much better numbers than we were getting before, so I think we're headed in a good direction. Here we are going to remove all the wing angle, which I've already done, which will help our top speed. It's going to help our handling. It's going to help a lot of things. That was a slight mistake with our first prototype car. We want enough cooling airflow to aid our reliability, although we have a pretty decent reliability as is. So let's not go too crazy with that and hurt our economy and aerodynamics. Wait, what are aerodynamics, right? Inside the car, we're going to stick with the 5 seats, even though we shortened that greenhouse a little bit. There's still room for those 3 passengers. And then we'll have a sport interior with the phonograph still installed, because this is still a show car, not the actual production vehicle. So we need to really wow people when they see it. And safety, we'll leave it at the standard for now. And suspension-wise, everything pretty much the norm here. Let me actually increase this ride height some. Try and ease it over the bumps a little bit more. Give it a little bit more off-road ability as well. Gotta remember, not every road is paved, and sometimes you might need to get through some rough terrain. So we want it to not have any bottom-out issues. Alright, great. Here we go. This is the Mark II version of our Intrigue. We'll be taking this to car shows soon, resending it to the investment team to see what they have to say. And if they do approve, and we have enough backing, this car will reach production in 1962. So let's compare this versus the initial concept. So the initial concept had a drivability of 20. The new one has a drivability of 33.3. That's a huge number. That was really important to fix that issue. The sportiness has come up quite a bit as well, 8.5 to a 14.8. Even with the smaller displacement, less cylinders, and incredibly less horsepower than our initial V8, we still managed to wrangle up quite a bit of sportiness. We did lose a little bit of comfort due to the reduced greenhouse size and some other changes, and the prestige did indeed come down as well as we lose our V8. But those factors I don't think are as important for our initial production vehicle. Weight has come down significantly. A lot of that came down with the engine. Reliability is improved slightly with our new version as well. Utility, as you can see here, yes, we did lose quite a bit of utility, but we do have the option of a 4-door or wagon version of this car in the future to really help the utility market. At 19.7 miles per gallon, this is a car that people can actually afford to drive, and a total cost that is less than $9,000 to produce, so we could potentially really break into a very competitive market for the average American citizen. So when it comes to the all-out performance of the vehicle, we do indeed lose out on some of this. We no longer have that incredible 142 mile per hour top speed. Our quarter mile time is no longer in the 16s. Our 0 to 60 has come down, but not dramatically so. 8.9 to 9.3 isn't really that big of a change. The highway performance of the car, 50 to 75, is not very good anymore at 5.8 seconds. But with a highway speed of 55 miles per hour, that's not something the average consumer is worried about. Alright, out of character now. I hope you guys are enjoying this kind of in-character series here in Automation. But thank you guys so much for your support on the first episode. Really loved all the feedback we had. I want to say over 50 people vote in the straw poll, which is great. That's way more than we got in the previous versions of the Vector Automotive Challenge, so everyone seems pretty excited about this idea. The concept car did not go into production because of you guys' input, and that is great. That is awesome. That is what I wanted. I really wanted this series to be based off of you guys' feedback and, kind of a group project, if you will. But we all own a little bit of Vector Automotive. I'm just the figurehead. I'm just the guy that's sitting here on the table sketching out the designs. Thanks to Cooper, Rob, and Packbat for your voice clips. That was really cool, and I think adds a little bit of depth to the series, so that was really cool. So for next episode, we're going to do a little bit of the same thing here. I'm going to put up a straw poll, but instead of do you think you are interested in investing, now it is, do you think we take this car to production for 62? And if we do indeed take it to production for 62, next episode we will completely flesh out an entire model lineup for this car to get it ready for production. If you guys don't think it's ready, and please be honest, there's no pressure to keep this thing going. We absolutely can just start all over. That's a definite possibility. We're not going to produce a vehicle that is not good enough for production. So we want to avoid that mistake. Please let me know. Alright, but that's going to do it for this episode. Thanks as always for watching, and I will see you next time. Catching and passing are two different things. See, you can't really dive bomb somebody there, you're not supposed to. So it's worthwhile to back up the entry rather than to push it. Try and get that good launch out of the turn. That's the key.